Have you been enameling a long time and just never gotten around to making your samples? Or are you brand new with enameling and wanting to just get a better understanding of the colors that you are adding to your collection? How about you're working on a new project and you want to try custom blending some colors? I'm Chris Cravens, the artist at Ten Gables, and today I'm just going to share a little bit about the art and science behind making samples in your studio. I've been enameling a little over 5 years, and I make all kinds of samples in the shop, as well as other enamel artists that I know. We like to get in there if we're working on a new project and maybe do something like this, where we're testing a bunch of different colors together to see what they look like. Um, Maybe wanting to try a new technique. So this one, I was just going from a clear to a darker blue and just testing colors together to see how they worked. Even into something like this where I'm custom blending colors on top of other colors. So having having samples can really benefit you as an artist. It might seem like it takes a little bit of time. If you look at it more like you're playing and wanting to learn from the colors themselves and perfect some techniques before you put them on your good pieces, you may actually end up saving yourself a lot of time in the long run. So samples, the basic anatomy of a sample, I usually just use copper 24 gauge, and then I put a layer of counter enamel on the back. I like to fire a layer of Scalex on also, so that this makes basically a non-stick surface, so I can lay it right on a piece of mica on a firing screen, or there's fiber pads that you can use that lay on there when you stick them in the kiln, and then that way you're not having to keep putting this thing on a trivet. The front side could be any treatment that you desire. Traditional samples look, I have written this on a card because, to be honest, I have never done this. The thought of laying out all of these, like this is, you would basically lay out a canvas with copper, flux over copper, white, silver, and gold foils, and then stripes of color across. So you can go through every transparent color in your library and basically make little enamel chips to use. The thought of this was something that I just felt like wasn't going to be very useful to me personally, because I prefer to do things more like this where I'm just playing around with colors. However, this fall, I took a class with Ricky Frank, and he showed us the way he likes to do samples. And for the first time, I actually got excited about pulling a library of my base colors together into samples that I could pick and choose individual colors from and put them together. He likes to use Velcro on the back of his samples. I'm going to show you in a minute what I like to do with mine, and that's to put a little magnet on the back because I have a metal cabinet and these go right in the door. This is my workshop in the metal cabinet I was talking about. On the front, I have these charts from Thompson, which are handy, and this nice little quote from Ricky, which I love. Inside, you'll see I have all my enamels, and on the door, here is the beginning of my sample collection. Like I mentioned earlier, they are set up so I can see the color, and then a nice little magnet on the back to make them handy and easy to access. Personally, I've found it more effective for me in the workshop to have a goal in mind whenever I set aside time to make samples. That might look like testing new colors and methods or combinations and things like mason stains, or using floral wafers, whatever it may be for a specific project. Or maybe I want to expand my magnetic library of color a little more. Regardless, the tools and techniques are the same when you're getting ready to make samples. So you'll want to have a few things handy. First of all, you'll need your metal that you're going to enamel on. If you're going to be creating samples like I did here, for my little magnetic library, taking the time and creating a bunch of blank canvases, so to speak, with the counter enamel and Scalex on the back for kilns, um, and white on the front can speed up the process when you're working with the colors. If you want to do anything like test colors over silver or gold, foils, any little add-ins, like maybe you want to try fusing silver balls, or even try cloisonne wire to see how it looks with certain colors, have that handy. You need to decide how you're going to apply the enamel. Are you going to dry sift? Are you going to wet pack? Do you need sgraffito tools handy? Basically thinking about different things that you want to accomplish with your sample making session, and having all of that stuff right at your fingertips just makes it a lot more fun while you're in the workshop. You'll also need a heat source, so whether that's a kiln or a torch, it doesn't really matter. All of the things that I have been saying about Scalex and things like mica sheets for laying things on do not apply to the torch. You can see some of my other videos where I talk about the differences between the two. Personally, I like to use the kiln for color tests like this because I like to work in big batches. And I get a better idea of how they're going to behave with my kiln. This is from a crazy day in my studio. I spent maybe 4 hours working on samples for a series that I'm working on, and my studio was a mess, but I'm really happy with the end results. As you can see from this little sample chip, looks crazy with everything all together, but I have ideas for how I want to apply each of these individual techniques going forward. Here are a few samples of blues from my growing library of Thompson enamel colors. I like to use the same format for each tile that I make so that I don't have to think about what I'm looking at every time I pull them out to combine colors together or lay them next to each other for inspiration. To begin, I create canvases with a base coat of 1030 white, and then I fuse on a piece of silver and a piece of gold foil. I come back and put some flux over part of that silver foil, the bottom part, fire that, and then sift on the color on top. I could wet pack, but I decided sifting is good enough for me. The last thing that I do is I will use either Mason stain or fine line black. P3 also can work for this, with a quill pen, to write the enamel color on and fire it as well. This makes a permanent sample. If you don't have black or don't want to deal with a crow quill pen or a tiny brush, you can always use Sharpie to do this, but just be aware that it could come off. So now that you have all these beautiful enamel samples, where do you put them? So in my case, I have this really cool metal cabinet that you've seen. It works great for all of my base color samples like this, as a fancy color chart, if you will. But I've made so many other custom samples just for projects. So a few ideas for storing them. I've seen people use the plastic tackle box trays. Those can work well for filing them. Sometimes people will put them in envelopes and write on the envelope what it was, and maybe use like an index card filing system to slide them in. In my own studio, I love these. I love putting things in binders so I can keep track of what I've learned and so forth. And I found these plastic, they're basically coin collectors. They work really well for one-off samples like this, and then I have sheets where I can put notes about what's going on with each of them. Another solution, using along similar lines, is for baseball card collectors. So this was sitting in my cabinet, and you can see that gravity has taken its toll. So now it sits in my cabinet like this, hoping that it will straighten itself out. But in here, here's some samples, and then I just use like really tiny index cards or scraps of paper and write notes. This is my favorite way to organize on the fly samples. So those are some ideas from my own studio and what I've seen some other people do. But I'd love to hear from you. How do you like to organize samples? And are there other cases or other ways that you have made them for your own shop? I'd love to hear more. You can put a comment below, and I'm happy to listen. I hope that this video has helped you think about samples in a different way, and I encourage you to spend some time playing. Bye-bye.